You're listening to 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show. Of your host, Jimmy Petruzzi. Bringing you news from the local area around the world, we aim to increase participation in sport and awareness. We've been very fortunate on this show. We've interviewed some of the world's best athletes, sports people, coaches, trainers, you name it, they've been on the show. We also have a segment featuring some of the most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields who've given us an insight into their perspectives on psychology and mental health. Today we're a very special guest. We're travelling all the way to Barnsley. We aim to bring the world to South and the South to the world, so we're going across to Barnsley, and she's the first team manager of Barnsley Women's Football Club. Over the summer time, we've sort of seen the Lionesses sort of increase the profile of football. Certainly, everyone no doubt enjoyed the games, the success around the team. Saw some great football being played, some great crowds, great final. But it's important to remember that throughout the year that football carries on, and particularly in the women's game, it's really important that we sort of keep getting behind the sport and increase awareness and participation. So we'll get a bit of insight into women's football as well as her own career and Barnsley. So Lois Daniels, the manager of the first team Barnsley Women's Football Club, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on board, Lois. So just let's start from the beginning for you, Lois, in terms of, just for our listeners, what sort of got you into football? What was your motivation to go into the world of football?
I think probably it was coming down to my dad and my brother. My older brother's 3 years older than me, and he played for a boys' team. So me and my dad would go and watch him every week while my sisters were going to dance with my mum. So just through watching there, I started engaging with his football and playing for his team before joining the boys' team for my age group. I think they've probably been the biggest driving force getting me involved in football.
Brilliant. And sort of in terms of yourself, in terms of going into sort of coaching and sort of managing now, what's been your sort of journey so far into the world of coaching and obviously managing?
My journey so far is, well, I'm only 26, so this will be my 6th season under my belt, and it started really when I was playing at a club, and I always knew that I wanted to go into coaching and management. So at this particular club, I got given the opportunity to do some minimal coaching duties, and that happened for about 6 months before I moved over to Sheffield United with Carla Ward, and she gave me free rein basically to lead the women's development squad there, and shown a lot of faith in me to do that. And I did that for going into my 5th season before I was approached by Barnsley to come and take on their women's setup there, and this year I'm going into it as the manager, and last year was my first season with Barnsley.
Brilliant. And in terms of so far, what would you say, overall, some of the sort of challenges that you've faced? Like you've said before, obviously it's early in your journey from a managerial point of view, but in terms of thus far, just generally speaking, coaching, managing, what would you say some of the challenges have been for you thus far?
I think the biggest one really was, at first, I remember when I was at Sheff, I was the youngest manager in the league, so you automatically then feel like you have a point to prove, but I'm quite open and quite honest, and I'm the first to say to the girls, we're all there, we're all going to make mistakes, and we've got permission to make those mistakes, and it's how we bounce back from them. And I think showing that level of character and respect is a two-way thing. So now, being at Sheffield United, I was coaching players that were 10 years older than me at some point, which I'm doing the exact same now. To be honest, I feel like I'm taking it in stride. I really enjoy it. And it's just been a learning curve and a process, but anything I like to say that anything I lack in experience, I certainly make up for in passion, and I'm so willing to learn, and I'm so driven to try and be the best that I can be.
And in terms of the highlights so far, I'm sure there'll be a lot more highlights to come, but what would you say some of the sort of highlights you've had so far in your sort of career?
I think the biggest highlight at the minute is the squad and the culture and the environment we've been able to create at Barnsley. These things are processes, they take an awful amount of time, and I think we're in a really good place where we are at the minute, and that to me, I've spoke about this to the girls, is just as important as a medal or a 3 points, because it's a really big thing that sets our foundations for years to come. So I think we've got that right at the minute, and that's been a real big success for me. Thinking the playing success at Barnsley currently, we're implementing a philosophy and a style of play that we'd like to see, and we can definitely see it gelling together. And going back to my time at Sheffield United, we were very consistent and very ambitious in the league and cup that we were playing in, and we were quite successful.
You seem, really well organised, Lois. You're really organised. You're really knowledgeable. You sort of understand management really well in terms of sort of managing plays, and I can imagine it's not easy to sort of get the balance in terms of, obviously it's a results-driven business, sport, football, but also getting the players to go out there and perform. I can imagine it's not easy. What's been influential in your career, learning the skills of management and sort of, coaching and so on and so forth?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. I think for me, individual man management and creating that culture, the environment and the relationships is central to everything that I do, and that's me, manager, and I believe that they come hand in hand. From studying masters in sport coaching and care, I think I don't believe you can get the results and the performance driven things if you've not got that. And that, I think, so the masters has certainly been a big influence in my career, but also just being a people's person, just having some sort of emotional intelligence and being able to understand people. It brings people together, it creates a culture, it creates an environment, and I think in the past, having been a player, seeing how you've been treated rightly and wrongly, it also has a big impact on your career and how you want to be and the mannerisms and behaviours you create. So they're probably the biggest influencing factors.
Now, it's really interesting, and you mentioned before about your inspiration to go into football, your dad, your brother, and I know that there's people listening at the moment sort of considering going into football. They may not have someone in the family, if you could call it a role model, so to speak, to sort of bring them along and get involved. But I know it's hard to give advice. Lois, everyone's on their own journey type thing. But what would you say to someone sort of contemplating getting into football? Be it male or female, in terms of thinking, okay, well, I want to get involved, but I might feel a little bit nervous to sort of go down and sort of train and sort of meet new people. I can imagine for some people it might be a little bit sort of intimidating to sort of new surroundings and everything else that goes with it. What would you say to anyone sort of contemplating getting involved in the game?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is finding good people. So whether it be a local grassroots club or a local team, finding good people who are prepared to take you on board and be patient with you, and most people do that. The biggest driving force and the biggest factor for me at the minute is going to football and seeing the amount of passion that our owner of Barnsley puts into it, and seeing the pride that the girls have when they play and the passion they have for it. And football's tough, at our level, because sometimes you're coming into it and you're been working full time, you go into training then at X amount of time and you're not getting home till whatever time, so it can be a tough gig, it's a tough ride. But what really drives you and focuses you really is the people around you. When I see the girls playing well or enjoying themselves, or I see our owner coming in and just buzzing, that's what spurs you along. You remember why you do it, you remember you're there for them just as much as yourself. And I think if you find the right people in an environment, then that sets you up.
Absolutely, that's for sure. And in terms of, say, I know you can only sort of speak for your own sort of journey, but just generally, what's your perception of sort of women's football? To me, it seems like it's sort of certainly moving forward. I can can speak from my perspective. Really, I think there is still a long way to go in some respects in terms of development and support and amongst many other things really. But it's certainly I think that the result, by the way, was phenomenal at the Euros. I think all things considered, the team's come a long way. But where do you sort of see women's football at the moment in the UK, Lois? What's your sort of perspective in terms of when you sort of got into the game and where it is now?
Yeah, well, from me coming into the game, I was playing with the boys when I was under 6, under 7, all the way through till about under 12. So it's come a real long way, and I think the amount of money and resource that the FA are putting into the game, with the emerging talent centres coming now, the strategy for the FAWNL, there's an awful amount of time, processes, money and effort going into the women's game, but I don't think it's ever going to be enough. I don't try to compare it to the men's game anymore. We should own game and we strive for our own goals and achievements, but the more sponsorship, the more money, the more backing, the more TV rights we get behind women's game, it's only going to grow. And you've seen at the Women's Euros, the standard of football in that tournament, it has never been greater, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's been phenomenal, like you say, Jim.
Yeah, no, it's one of them. I mean, one thing that sort of, I've been sort of meaning to ask, I'm not quite sure about in terms of, say, in America they've got a strong college system, sport generally speaking, the college system's quite strong, and a lot of players have the opportunity to sort of study full-time and train full-time, and that sort of gives them the opportunity to sort of, produce strong athletes, not just in sort of sport, in football, but across the board. But in terms of the universities over here, I've been a lecturer myself for a long time, to be fair, so I probably should know the answer to this. But with the exception of universities, Lois, it seems to me that the college system, the university system, doesn't really have like a strong sort of protocol for football in terms of, am I fair in saying that, in terms of, say, okay, the competition, say, university over here for football, it doesn't sort of seem to be across the board in terms of, and I think that's a great opportunity for athletes to develop,
Yeah, definitely. I think the college provision that I'm aware of is that students now and females now, it's ever growing that they can BTEC program and combine their academic side with the footballing side.
Yeah.
We've got loads of different providers that offer that now, so that's good.
Brilliant, yeah.
And with universities, it's a real mixed bag from my experience, Jim, because you get the universities where they have a social team and they go on tour and things like that, but also you get universities that pay girls a scholarship to play for their university team. But I think the biggest thing where, it's almost like a female athlete is the WSL Academy structure and the setup of that, which is only going to get better in my eyes.
Of course, yeah.
That they are in some days and they are treated like female athletes. So I think that's something that we can certainly keep our eye on.
Full time, yeah, definitely. And so, like, in terms of women's football, so full time, is it just mainly the top league that's full time at the moment? Is like underneath the top league, is there like full time as well, as far as you're aware, Lois?
Yes, I think everyone in the top league's full time, and then in the one below that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's all bar 2 that are full time.
Okay, yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah, so it's interesting in terms of, like, for our listeners as well. Obviously, I'm not. I know you can only speak from your experience, and but it's sort of interesting to see your perception. I suppose if you've got, say, 3 or 4 leagues, like in the men's game, if not even more, that are full time. To be fair, I mean, you can sort of go as far down as sort of teams outside league football that are full time. Then it's going to definitely increase the level of the game in terms of this country. Would you not think if they can get like a tier of full time women's football teams, maybe even like 2 divisions or 3 divisions, that's going to have a big impact in terms of a pathway for players?
Yeah, 100%. And I think probably at the minute we are a long way off that. I mean, you've got exceptions to that, like in our league we're 4th tier and we've got Newcastle in our league who've just gone full time, so they're a great example. But I think we need financial backing to be able to do that. Say the top 4 or 5 teams that are really competitive, and then after that you kind of lose competitive edge and your real professionalism in a way. be disrespectful, but it's just how the women's game's set up compared to the men's, is that there's probably a lot less women that play.
Oh, okay, the catchment, yeah, so yeah, of course, yeah, the sort of number of players available, of course, yeah, definitely, and it's really interesting, really, because in the stats in the men's game, I think it's 0.001% or something along them lines are going to be professional footballers. I quote a study a while ago. I stand corrected, but it's tough. It really is. Obviously, under no illusions. In terms of the women's game, what's generally the sort of holy grail for women's football? Do they want to be full time? I mean, what sort of motivates? I know everyone's motivated differently, but is that sort of one of the big motivations for like women in football to become a full time professional football, or just sort of play and combine a career?
It's a combination, really. I think with the young players you've got coming through, I think that they probably shouldn't be there if that's not their ambition and that's not their aim, because that's the way it looks to be going. But then you've also got the older and more experienced players and the players that are driving a career at the same time. So we've got players in our squad who are teachers, who have their own business. If they were to go full time at the minute, it probably wouldn't match the wage that they were getting.
Of course,
yeah. So I think before anyone thinks about full time football, they'd have to have the real solid financial backing and the sustainability to be able to think about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff, really, and I think that in terms of going forward, I mean, I sort of had to think about this in terms of like you mentioned before, the emerging talent is great, and I think that if they can talent ID would be a great thing as well. But I think if you can sort of, and only based on my limited knowledge, but I think if you've got like a really strong schools program, good talent ID, you've sort of get in different areas and encourage participation, awareness of the game, have a structure to get to the top, a pathway, and a lot of support. Obviously, if you don't get to the top, then you can only increase. And sport in this country, to be fair, in the UK means a lot. We saw at the Euros where it is a sporting country, England, that's for sure. They sort of love their sport, and I think, do you sense that as a coach that this really is important to people in this country to sort of have a good sporting team?
Oh yeah, 100%. And like I touched upon earlier, it is that passion and that drive that keeps you going at 11 o'clock at night on the drive home. I don't think anyone, in our league does it for any sort of financial reward. We all do it because we've got a real passion for it and we enjoy it. And we have a small, close-knit fan base that come with us to away games and home games week in, week out. And the only thing they get from that is sheer passion and a feeling of a community and a bit of togetherness. So a big project we're working on at the minute at Barnsley is trying to lead on a real red print of togetherness, and that we can start all the way from the under-8s all the way up to the first team, which shows a real strong identity, and not just in the way they play, but our culture we create. And that's a real thing to us, and making sure that passion is driven all the way from that young age group all the way through, so we can produce as much homegrown talent as possible, especially now we've got the ETC coming on board. And
what do you think would mean for Barnsley to have, say, for example, like a player come through? I mean, obviously there's a lot of strong sporting tradition in Yorkshire in general, and some great athletes across the board, and traditionally it's produced a lot of great athletes. And what do you think would mean to have, say, a sort of rising star come through the ranks to Barnsley itself, do you think?
Yeah, to be honest, I think we've got a few of them.
Yeah.
We've got 3 of them in the first team now that have made the way from age groups. One of them specifically got Young Player of the Year last year, and I keep referring to her, but she's going to be a fantastic player. And 2 others, one who was an absolute consistent starter for us last year, and she's a fantastic young player. And I think should we be given the platform where we can, progress through the leagues, these players are only going to get stronger, and hopefully we're able to retain them with us.
Absolutely, yeah, no, for sure. And I think that it's interesting you say. I think in terms of I think one thing's for sure that from my perspective, like looking at sort of Barnsley, the organisation, the attention to detail, the professionalism, there doesn't seem to be any sort of stone unturned. It really has amazed me, Lois, the professionalism. I think that you sort of struggle to find that level in professional game at any level, in any code. Just like from all the platform, what you guys offer the players is sort of phenomenal. It's sort of so well organised and such an opportunity for development. Do you think maybe one day there might be an opportunity for like one of the players to maybe even go all the way and represent England or a national team for that matter?
Thanks, Jim. That feedback's really kind of you.
Well, it's the truth. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We've got so many players in our squad that with us, not because of our position in the tiers, but with us because of what Barnsley offers, what we can offer, and our culture, genuinely, because we've got a lot of players in our squad. They know that, but we've also got a squad that we're nurturing. That we have got players in that squad who, no doubt, if we produce them with the platform, they're only going to go on and perhaps represent the country, but also play much higher. Absolutely.
So, for sure. And I suppose in terms of, your own vision, no doubt, there's certain things you probably want to keep sort of, close to your chest, so to speak. But, what can you share about your vision going forward? Lois, what's your sort of vision for the club? I mean, I'm perfectly aware that, it's a collective vision, but in terms of sort of your vision, where do you sort of see things, going, or would like to see things going from here?
Yeah, I think it's really good that, because a lot of people say to me, what's the goal for the first team? But the fact that you said club is a really big thing to me, and it starts from bottom up for me. And I've said this numerous times, and we've got to get the ETC form now. We've got to get young players in, emerging talent in, to be able to become the next first team players. And I think the vision is to ultimately be together, create a culture and environment that's untouchable, and whether that's through the professionalism or the platform we offer them or the coaching we offer them, everything then I feel like falls into place. So whether the red print we've got throughout the club, whether it's the identity we've got, the amount of freedom we've got, the players we've got and the people we've got, but also then it allows us to be able to start winning games and becoming a level of consistency that we've not hit before. This is why I think it's all a process, and it's about not rushing the process, because each building block we put in place, it does take a while, and I think to hit that level of consistency that we want to hit, we've got to make sure we've got every single building block in the wall to be able to hit that, and it is a timely process, but genuinely, Jim, I've not been happier of where we're at the minute. After the biggest thing for me, and I refer back to this, is the people. We've got such good people at the club, and that comes from the board, the owner, all the way down.
Absolutely.
The age group managers and the girls we've got in every setup, and the first team squad are going from strength to strength. That they really are a fantastic group.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I mean, the platform is there. I mean, the platform's certainly there. That's for sure. Like you said there, I think that in sport in general, in football in general, I think it's always important to have that sort of patience. To be fair, these things take a bit of time. Absolutely, but I think that's a great point there. Sort of, you get a good solid base, and you build a club on a good solid base, then you leave like a legacy sort of going forward, and that's really important to have a good solid base. In terms of, say, anyone listening in thinking they'd like to get involved, I know obviously that support's important. And obviously, player sponsorship amongst other things, really, it's something I sort of touched in the previous interview with Steve. But if anyone sort of wants to sort of get involved, and Barnsley being sort of a proud area, and sort of, no doubt there's people listening not just in Barnsley, but maybe all around the UK, around the world, who might be originally from there and think they'd like to sort of get involved, to put something back in. Where can they sort of go to sort of, from a social media point of view, get in touch with, people at the club, the powers that be, that can maybe, get involved on sort of some level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing the way how to get involved is just become a fan and follow us and come to games you can, and we really appreciate that sort of support. And then the support that really, really does go a long way, and that is invaluable, is the player sponsorships and the packages, and that, you know, like you said before, Jim, and you alluded to, is the platform we offer these girls and the level of professionalism and setup that we offer these girls. We'd like to be able to continue that, and we have an awful lot of backing from the board, but also individual companies and sponsorships go an awful long way to make sure that we can continue to provide this platform and set up for the girls. So I think if you want any sort of information on games, becoming a fan, tickets, and sponsorship packages, just head over to our Twitter, or if you go on Twitter, you'll find my email on there, or Steve's email on there, and we'd be more than happy to chat through any corporate and sponsorship packages that we offer.
Absolutely. And I suppose, you know, we talked about obviously having a successful first team, and we sort of, you know, alluded to like having an infrastructure and a base as well. I think, you know, equally what's really important, really significant, is the impact it has on the town itself. You know, obviously, you know, getting young people from an early age engaged in sport, it can only be a good thing in terms of, you know, making lifelong friends and building confidence, and sort of, you know, that's what, you know, we want really, in terms of, you know, for a lot of people, I suppose sport, Lois, it's almost like a family, an extended family, to get involved with and make these sort of friendships, and it's a really, really big thing, really. Do you sort of see that as, like, for anyone listening who's sort of contemplating getting involved and coming to watch the games, or is that like something that, you know, how do you see that in terms of, you know, building a sort of communal feel around the club as well, and, you know, getting people playing sport, and, you know, whilst they're playing sport, has a knock-on effect, not just in football, but academically, socially, all the other things that obviously are equally, if not more important to participating in sport.
Yeah, 100%, and that family feel that you alluded to is certainly, I think, what we've got at Barnsley. We make sure that all the girls, you know, chat to the sponsors or the fans when we're on the bus on the way to the away game, or after the game when we're in the clubhouse. We all stay behind and have a drink with people that come to our game, or all our sponsors, and genuinely, you know, I think that really is what attracts people to Barnsley Women's FC, and certainly attracted me is the people and the community feel that we give, because it certainly is one big family. And if you look on our Twitter, I'm a really big advocate for getting fans' opinions and our physios' opinions just as much as what we get the players' opinions, and you'll see all that on our Twitter, and it really is a big, we call it the Reds family.
Absolutely, and I think it's, you know, like you said, it's sort of, you know, that's a big part of any sports team, getting people involved, and you know, by getting them involved, and it has a massive you know, knock-on effect, a positive knock-on effect anyway, in sort of many other areas too. And I mean, you mentioned the sort of like the younger age groups. Is there opportunities for sort of schools to this might be outside your remit, I'm not sure, but is there opportunity for, like, you know, for like the emerging talent, for sort of schools to sort of say, well, you know, perhaps we've got this player, would you like to, you know, can I send them down for training, or?
Yeah, 100%. We're currently in that process at the minute, to be honest, Jim. So we're contacting the local schools in the area and doing exactly what you've just said. There will be a trial process in place, for an open session in place for the Emerging Talent Centre over the next couple of weeks.
Brilliant.
But as well for the age groups, it's turn up and play. You know, if you'd like to get involved, come and get involved with the age groups at Barnes Women's FC, and then the EC is going to be slightly different. But those emails are certainly going out to the schools, and as well as that, local schools around the area will be offered free tickets to games for all the children in the upcoming games. So if anybody is interested in any packages like that, please just get in contact with us.
Absolutely, and it's been really kind of you to join us, Lois. It's been really interesting that out for our listeners to get an insight from someone at managerial level in women's football. I think it's, you know, been a really interesting insight for me, and certainly it's been an interesting insight for our listeners. That's for sure. It's been, you know, fascinating to sort of hear, and it is important that we sort of keep the momentum going across the board. beyond the Euros, and obviously the World Cup's not too far away, and amongst other things, really in women's football too. So but I think it all starts from the base really in terms of getting involved. But it's been great speaking to you, Lois. Obviously, we wish you all the very best for this season and the club, and no doubt you'll sort of carry on building on the momentum you've created so far, and just take one game at a time and see where it goes. That's the key.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks so much for having us on, and thanks for all your support.
Brilliant. That was Lois Daniels. She's the first team manager of Barnsley Women's Football Club. She's been very, very kind to join us on Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show. If you're hosting Petruzzi, bringing you news from the local area and around the world. The aim is to increase participation, awareness of sport, bring the world to Salford and Salford to the world. Thanks for listening.